Hey guys, I hope you're having a beautiful day and making the most of the gift that we have, which is the present. Now, today we're going to go through a cool interaction. I have one of my good buddies, Kurtis Lush, here, and he's actually taking the time to go through my book, The Power of Mental Toughness, and he's going to be going through some questions to be asking me so I can give you a little bit more in-depth understanding from my background, my experiences, and everything I've gone through to write this book. But as well, he's a very ingenious person and he asks us some very intelligent questions. So we are going to dive through some of these topics and hope you guys can tune in to take a good listen. All right, Kurtis, we got a guest sitting here and he is joining.
All right, the microphone thing's just bomb.
Yeah.
Bros, thanks for having me on. Much appreciated.
No problem, buddy. Appreciate you here.
Yeah, man. I said you back in December. I bought the book. I was like, there's going to be a day where I want to sit, have a bit of an interview with you about the great things you wrote, and I'm happy that we're here today to be able to sit. Yeah, do you want to talk right into this?
Yeah, man.
Because
sure.
I got a lot of questions, but I want to start just with a big overview kind of thing and the big message that I took away from the book. I would argue, and you would likely argue, that the big message of this book is that sport and being an athlete is not just about physical performance. It's really about the mental mindset that one puts into their performance. And it's stuff that it's not even just like on the day of your mindset, it's the whole process and practice around it. One thing within the book that I was curious about, though, is if you were to do a breakdown percentage-wise for an athlete about, if you do a composition of an athlete, let's say, of the percent that is body and the percent that is mindset, what would be that percentage breakdown for you and why?
Well, that's a really good question because going through my journey, I have met a lot of athletes that are very talented. And when you get to different levels, right, you naturally get to the point where everyone's great. You know, when you're going through high school, everyone sticks out a little bit. They go to OFSA, they go to the next level, whatever it may be from where we are. But they tend to really shine above everyone else. But as soon as they get to the level where they're amongst peers that are the same level, you start to see who can really handle that adversity and challenges and a lot more failure. Because then the consistency gets a lot less of the success that they're having and that they're used to, because they're getting praised all the time. They're feeling like no matter where they go, they have confidence they're always going to be in the top. But as soon as you're around everyone else that has that level of ability, then all of a sudden it changes how much confidence and self-esteem they have. So the percentage-wise, this is interesting because I've watched some sports nowadays that I can tune in and pay attention to their mindset. And I really dial it in from a perspective now compared to when I was younger, that almost, I would say, I want to put it around a 60-40. I almost want to make it 50-50. The reason I say that is there's people who I've met that were not the fastest, not the biggest, strongest, or someone you would say looks the best athlete. But they had such a good head on their shoulders. They were consistent with their work ethic. They knew how to be very much in the moment and be very present. So that was, for me, something that I noticed with watching professional tennis players. Someone that brings to light is Kyrgios. This guy is such an amazing talent, and he should be always in the top 10. But he's like 100th in the world because he doesn't have the mindset to stay consistent for what his talent could be. And his talent could be better than like Federer, But his approach to the game is so much more focused on the aesthetics and everyone looking at him and how cool he looks and just kind of playing on the audience and really being dove into the crowd and being more focused on all those superficial aspects and has the lack of control, I would say, to control his emotions and when the rally doesn't go his way and not let that be a detriment to his next serve and his next one. And then you can see other athletes that are different. But on my experience personally, for me, I've been fortunate that I had a little bit higher level of my athleticism, and it made me get to a level that my mindset could lack a little bit to get to that point. But as soon as I got to there, then I had experiences that I had a lot of emotional roller coasters, and I had to learn lessons the hard way because I was gifted with a little bit more athleticism than, say, the mindset. There's some people who are a little bit the other way, and they do get a lot of places too. But sometimes your talent can get you a little bit further than the other person, but that doesn't mean you get to stay there, or that doesn't mean you get to reach the pinnacle of elite sports. It just means you get the experience of it. Because people will take a chance on you, especially when you're 16, 17, 18. people will say there's so much upside. You're young, you're youthful. Oh, maybe they'll come into their own. Maybe they'll figure it out. And then by the time you're 21, 22, they go, oh, well, are they starting to figure it out or not? Well, we'll give them a little bit more. And then by the time you're 23, 24, then realistically it's like, well, if you haven't figured it out by now and you're not that great of a talent, then potentially they're going to move on to that next 16 to 18-year-old and give that next try, right? So that's kind of the interesting thing about sports in general. But yeah, I would say a 60-40, even almost a 50-60.
If you're saying 60-40, are you saying 60% mind or 60% body on that?
I'm going, the reason I say 60% body is because there's athletes at the highest level who don't necessarily have the best mindset. They have a good enough mindset, so they're a good enough player to play professional at the, the highest level that gets you on TV, but they're not going to be all-stars.
Yeah.
And they might not be there for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Right?
So
but their athleticism got them there.
You bring up a really interesting aspect about the age, right? That like you grew up as a younger kid, that natural talent that comes on through. So it is more the body. You can score the goals, you can play the defense, you can do all those things. Yeah. But then it does get to that point in your development that you are now playing against equal competition. That it just keeps growing. For what age was it for you? Like when did that equal competition begin for you that you're just like, oh, I really gotta change how I play the game?
So, because I chose to make the leap at the age of 15, really moving to Libby, right? Playing for Team Ontario. Then I started playing with a level of kids that were around my quality, but I would say it was only based on where my mindset was at the time. If I was confident in myself, I still shined above. Yeah. And I'm very fortunate for that. There was still that slight separation of my talent. It was just their level of practice. When you have better facilities, when you have better coaches, when you have more practices, naturally you're going to be a little more polished, right? When I was going through the process, I was still a bit raw. So my talent was still shining above, but I would have inconsistencies of going like 4 for 4 and then 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Yeah. Right? So I wasn't as consistent at the time as maybe some of the other guys, but I had a lot more upside to look forward to. Now, I would say definitely 15, 16, because then I started trying to play for the Ontario Cup, which gets you to potentially be on Team Canada if you go and do well with Ontario. And, Greg Hamilton, who's usually the coach for the junior team, if he likes you, then he'll give you an invite to, I believe, a Dominican trip. They take a good amount of guys there. And if you excel or you perform well, then they might bring you on to the next trip, which might be, I believe, going to spring training at Disney. So then you get to play against more minor league teams, a lot of guys in AA, AAA, and it's a good exposure for a lot of scouts to see you. But as well, you're getting to represent your country. You're getting to be that next level echelons of people. And you naturally just kind of get put into a category of where you're expected to go to a Division I or get drafted because you're just a part of that group, right? Yeah. And for me, I almost had the opportunity to be a part of Team Canada, but I was just a little too old. By the time I really put it all together, I started getting stronger. I was hitting the ball better. I was more consistent. Then I was actually too old to be on the junior team. So I had the opportunity, of course, that year to be drafted, but it didn't end up working out in that regards. But I would say 15, 16, and that's usually for most sports, because also that was the first time I went to like tournaments in Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. And I started seeing guys, for the most part here, maybe throw mid-80s, upper 80s. We started seeing guys throwing 94, 95, right? Guys that are 6'3", 200 pounds, and they're 16 years old. Yeah. So that competition jump just took a massive leap. And, I always wondered, what's in the water in Texas and California?
There's a lot in the water.
What's in the water? These guys are just huge. So luckily nowadays, the level of training has gotten better in Canada. Yeah. And you have more of the Josh Naylors and the Bo Naylor, two brothers, and their next brother is probably going to be a big leaguer down the road too if he keeps his head straight. So there's a lot of Canadians who are coming out, Tyler O'Neill with the Cardinals. There's so many good Canadians that have come out of these programs, either from Vauxhall or Langley Blaze or, Ontario Blue Jays, Team Ontario. They've picked it up because a lot of guys who have went through the process, played pro ball, they've come back now and become coaches with these teams. Yeah. As well, the facilities have gotten better. More parents are investing more money into their kids so they can do a lot of these tournaments and trips and amazing exposure aspects for these kids in their next level step. Especially for, getting a university scholarship or potentially the 1% who get to get drafted. you need to be playing the best competition at all times.
Yeah.
And for me, I got to, when I was 16, play against Mookie Betts, right? I got to play against Carlos Correa. I got to play against guys that are all-stars.
Yeah.
And that told me, especially now down the road, that I was in a pretty high level of baseball to be rubbing shoulders with those kind of guys.
Yeah.
But it also, I had a lot of failure in some of those tournaments because I had not seen that level of velocity or breaking balls or just the amount of people, the scouts and the pressure to perform. It was something different for me. For them, it might just be another high school game. So you could also see how they were keeping, their emotions in check and how their confidence and their swagger, as we kind of put it, how they walked on the field and behaved. It was almost like they deserved it, right? Whereas we were kind of feeling our way around. So it was definitely a cool experience, but 16 for sure.
Okay, that's good to know. And you touched on something. The way that I've kind of structured my questions has kind of been based off of different chapters that I read and about the different aspects of mindset that you had. You kind of led into one question I had, particularly about patience. Mm-hmm. Now, for the folks listening, one big thing that you may or may not know about Julian, we come from a pretty small town overall. We come from a place, Sarnia, and Sarnia, while it does have baseball culture here, Julian's right. The facilities, I remember back in the day, you used to go to 402 Golf Land as one of your places to go to the batting cages.
And it's like a softball.
And it doesn't even exist in our city anymore. We, even before coming on, talked about the state of sport here in Sarnia and about some of the, for future athletes, the ability for them to grow in the city and how hard and challenging it is. So there was a time growing up that, Julian, you were clearly above the rest for athletes. There was a good 3 or 4 solid years where we'd be playing with you and be like, oh boy, Julian's gonna run the team here a little bit, he's way above the rest here on the stuff. But it was a thing of patience though for you too, right? Because you're in that awkward transition stage that Sarnia couldn't do it for you anymore. You're at that point that to stay in Sarnia is going to be more damage for your development than going somewhere else. So my question is, for athletes that may be in a similar situation as you, in smaller or rural communities that may not have access to certain features, competition, what's your advice in staying patient and being able to develop while you're waiting for the next step to come for you or that lucky break?
Well, the key thing is always staying grounded. And one thing that I had a little bit of an issue with when I was younger is because I excelled with sports and I was, I guess you could say above the rest for the most part. A lot of games we compete. I just had natural instinct and competitiveness that I have to be thankful for my parents.
Yeah.
And I just always have the knack to work at things. And if I don't get it, I'll go work at it. And then if I watch a slow-mo, I'll slow-mo the slow-mo. So I'm so analytical. My girlfriend, she's a tennis player. And now that we start playing tennis, my instincts come out to want to get better, that I can try and compete with her. I shouldn't beat her because she was a Division II tennis player. But
she won't let that happen.
She won't. She'll hear this one day and laugh. But I went, and started watching more Federer videos and Nadal, and I'm watching them break down the slow-mo, and then I'm putting my video in slow-mo of the slow-mo, and I'm watching 50 times to be analytical because that's just how my brain works. I like to get the mechanics down to a science, and then I just keep working at it till it feels exactly how I want it to see, right? But patience. The biggest thing is I struggled with that at times when I was younger because of the ego. The ego got in the way where I could go about doing things a certain way, but I actually stopped playing certain sports along the way if my team was struggling or that we weren't good, we weren't going to win as a team. I'd go play a different sport. I stopped playing baseball for 3-4 years, and I played soccer, competitive travel soccer.
I remember that.
From when I was probably about, I'd say, 9, 10, till about 13. And then when I started turning 13, I went back to baseball more and started getting serious with that. And then by the time I was 15, after a good couple of years, is when I transferred over into Team Ontario. But having patience, you have to remember that when you're on a journey to play sports, if this is something you truly love, then it's a journey, right? When you're younger, you might not have the brain development to see things a different way. Mm-hmm. And it does take time to mature and grow up and take a step back and really reflect and see the steps you went through to be the person you're becoming. It is challenging when you're in a small town because you may really stand above the rest. But that should just give you a more self-confidence that if sport is something you want to do, potentially there is a good chance you have that opportunity. Because even from small towns, I mean, there's many guys that we grew up with that became really good athletes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We got to go to school with Kyle Jackson,
Yeah.
right? We got to go to school with, if you look at it in terms of just competing against other athletes, right? Like, I knew Nick Bucci growing up, right? Who became a AAA player with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
Right?
Even people that injured out, right? Like,
right? There's a lot of hockey
stars,
players. There's track stars. Like, I saw like a good friend, Tyler Annett, go to school for track, and he could have went even probably higher if things would have turned out different. But, everyone has their life and their choices, and it is what it is. But patience is probably one of the hardest things to naturally have. It is a difficult virtue, definitely, to obtain. But it's about the focus and being more engaged with just enjoying yourself and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that my fun was winning. So it was so competitive to the point where all I was focused on was winning. And I was sometimes missing the aspect of having fun. So to stay patient, especially if you're in a small town and you're not necessarily at the point where you can just leave and go to a big city or go to a bigger team, is to keep making it fun and not just lose the passion for that sport because you're not getting the level of competition that's engaging for your overall competitiveness, right? So it does take a little bit of time, but I also saw it as I was just learning and developing. The aspect of patience, really for me, I didn't even see it then. I wasn't even focused on it because like how my mindset was then, and how life is when you're living with your parents and everything's cushy. It's a different, thought process. But you just got to keep having fun and just enjoy it. Yeah.
So a few times in this interview, you're going to ask you to put your coach hat on. So this is one of those times we're going to change the aspect a little bit. It's not the athlete hat; it's going to be the coach hat because you're going to get situations where you're going to see the athlete, and I want you to kind of comment on the athlete a little bit.
Right.
You have a chapter all about growth, and one of the things you specifically talked about in that chapter is learning to learn. You just kind of went into detail about where I want to go here about an athlete that you have on your team that learns by winning.
Right.
Learns by playing, and that's the main way they want to learn.
Yeah.
By reading the book, you notice, there's many more ways to learn. Yeah. There's many more aspects in learning.
Yes.
So being a coach, how would you want to approach an athlete like this on your team? Because sometimes you want that person with the drive. You want that person with the killer instinct to win at all costs. But it can kind of go above their boundaries a little bit. It can do more damage than good for team morale. How do you focus on working with that athlete on your team to make sure that, for their own development even, that like learning by playing and learning by winning is not the only way to do it. There is other aspects that are really important to be that full-rounded athlete.
Yeah, and that's a good point because there's a lot of people who, if they don't win, they think they're a failure. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to sports, you're naturally supposed to make mistakes. But mistakes, even wording it that way, mistakes are when you repeat the same thing over and over. That's a mistake. When you attempt something in learning, when you're trying to be more efficient, when you're trying to be more effective and you're competing, naturally you're going to fail, right? But that's how you learn. And honestly, what I've learned from other great coaches of mine is sometimes you're going to learn the biggest lesson on success by failing. Because the things you fail at are going to help you have more success. So I'd really approach that athlete and show them that you have growth from success and failure. If you had success, that means you probably put in the right preparation, you were practicing on time, your mind was in the present, maybe some things went your way, you had a few good bounces, but overall, you won because you took the right steps to win. If it's all in your control, right? There's always other aspects, umpires, referees, your team, whatever it could be.
The unforeseen, right?
Right, depends on a team sport versus an individual sport, 100%, right? But if it was a team sport, say baseball specifically, and I had an athlete who, if they only learn from winning, that means that when they fail and lose, that they take it as a bad thing, right? And that they don't really look at it as a way to grow. So it would just be reminding them that the ones who are the most successful and that they look up to as the elite athletes have failed more times than most of those athletes are even willing to attempt in trying to become. Yeah. So just reminding them that if you want to be the best, you have to learn also how to lose. Because when you learn to lose, then you earn the right to win, and it'll change your mindset on how you work towards your practice, how you prepare better. If you always win and it always goes your way, well, there is going to come a time where you're going to meet an athlete who's just as good and may have a little bit more of his stuff today or her, and it's going to turn out that they're on the upper hand. But that should only give you the encouragement to go work a little harder. Maybe work a little bit more mindfully, I should say, and be more in tune with what's going to be the adjustments that you can make to have a better approach. So that the next time around, if there's a strategy involved, if there's, again, a certain way of thinking to changing how the outcome could be, you're just being very present and being very in the moment and just control what you can control. Because sports is about competing. And someone does need to win, someone does need to lose. But not always the winner is the most talented. Sometimes it is the person who just had the better strategy, who executed better at the right moments, and some bounces went their way. That's just how sports are. But it's also the respect of having good camaraderie and being a good team sport, that if you do lose, you tip your cap and say, like, hey, like, you just outperformed me today. So I'm going to try and practice and get better and have a better approach to trying to get it come in my favor next time.
Yeah.
But definitely there is many athletes who struggle with failure. It was something that I was hard on because we have this perfectionist mindset that a lot of people, not just kids, as a whole, keep that in their ideology. That is the way they go about living. If you go in their house, if you go in their car, everything is like OCD and perfectionism. But that also limits your opportunity for growth, because then you're set inside this boundary of what you think is perfect. But when you stay open-minded, that boundary could expand to new avenues that you never even knew were a possibility. Yeah. Because you're staying with a growth mindset. You're staying with the idea that anything can teach me. Anyone can teach me. Yep. You know, I can learn from a baby. I can learn from that 80-year-old man that has a lot of wisdom, you would say. But it's just a perspective and reminding the athlete that you're going to learn from both sides of it. And to keep going forward is the biggest step. If you win, okay, what did you do correct? Okay, and let's keep working at the weaknesses, because your weakest link is going to be your detriment. But if you're focused on the things as well when you have losses or you don't win, on what were the things that led to that? Was it something in your control? Okay, let's go work on it. Let's try and get better at it. Maybe we already knew that was a weakness. Was it out of your control? Okay, well then that's something we don't need to focus on. It's just a part of the game. Let go of that, and let's keep working on the weaknesses to get your strengths even better. Because your strengths can only grow to the limit of your weakness. Because it's always going to hold you back and be a hindering aspect. Right? I always heard my coaches say, like, whoever's the weakest link on the team is going to be the reason we don't make it somewhere. Like, you know, to a regional or a super regional or any of those things in Division I baseball. So, yeah, that would be my approach to teaching them growth. And reminding them the importance of both sides of it, for sure.
Alrighty. Well, interesting you bring all that up too, because one of your chapters as well is on positivity. I found this to be a particularly interesting chapter, to be honest, because you bring up about the whole world around you right now. We're in a world where you can constantly have an echo chamber, right? That, like, whether it be social media or just individuals around you, like, there's always people that can be positive reinforcers. But I also want to kind of look at the opposite aspect too, because we also know of stories, the athlete makes one bad move. That bad move costs a championship, it costs a game, it costs a record, it costs all these things. And sometimes these anonymous individuals will come on and just rip the individual alive online and cause, like, very significant harm to the individual's mindset, positivity, psyche, all those things. So I think one of the questions I want to ask, if you have a really big game that you're about to do, a really big feat that you're about to accomplish, how much time prior to it and how much time after it should you kind of, like, go into your own mindset with it? Like, go within either the team mindset, within the personal mindset, keep away from social media, keep away from all these things. Like, locking in at that moment, because sometimes it takes a little bit of time after an event happens, whether a success or a failure, for you to have perspective on it after. Right. Versus the people that are just online are just going to rip you live right off the top. Like, if you miss a goal and you hurt their Saturday night when they sat and watched you, like, that's not understanding the athlete, right? That's not understanding their mindset. So for young athletes out there that really get torn by this, like, what would you advise for stuff like that? Because it's getting worse every day, unfortunately, when it comes to this echo chamber.
Yeah, for me, I would say it is very important on my routine, and I'll speak of my experience first. When I had a big game coming up, that whole day leading up to the game depends again if it's afternoon or if it's later in the evening. Sometimes baseball's at 7 o'clock, right? Like certain sports, and sometimes you have a 1 o'clock afternoon matinee kind of. Typically, it's all about waking up in the rise and making yourself feel as good as possible right off the start. Right? If you got to go have a good breakfast, or you got to go do a good stretch and workout, or some meditation, something that's going to keep you very present and relaxed, because relaxed muscles are going to be the ones that are working the most effective. So definitely, if you're stimulated, or if you're playing video games, or doing things that get your mind too sped up, it's going to lead into potentially overthinking or being anxious before your game, which is not going to help your results, because it's just going to make you look too far ahead into trying to create an outcome before the steps are in front of you to jump over the hurdle, because you can't jump over the hurdle until it's in front of you. So if you're trying to leap beforehand, you could just really end up messing yourself up. So really for me, I try to stay away from my phone, from social media, and really just dive into a cool music playlist, something that's going to keep me relaxed, calm, and very in a good spirit, feeling joyful, playful. And then I would go through some type of a walkthrough, envisioning and visualization of already performing those tasks, already seeing myself hitting a home run or making a huge catch, or seeing a ball off the wall and making a perfect double cut that as a team throw a guy out at third base. Like all the scenarios that could happen for me as in my position, I already see myself excelling and doing those correctly, so that when the time comes and there's pressure, I just feel like it's muscle memory to go do it. My body knows what to do because we've been practicing. I put the work in and I trust my abilities. But the more I could visualize, also the more stress got taken off my shoulders to go into those situations with a good level-headed mindset, and to just be very present in the moment, but also be a step ahead, that when something's going to happen, I already know what I'm going to do to this. It's not going to make me overly reactive. I'm reacting to what I'm going to do, but at the same time, I'm going to focus on how I can respond to it correctly. And that's what makes great athletes, is the ones who are a step ahead, and it's like they already knew to be there, right?
Yeah.
But if they were, over anxious or trying to force it or one step too far ahead, then they are going to be at the wrong spot at the wrong time, and they're maybe miss that opportunity to score that goal or hit that good pitch or whatever it may be, whatever sport. So it's really important to find ways to keep yourself grounded, keep yourself very present, and not get in tune, with what anyone else is saying. Now, for me, being that most of my experience was Division I baseball and a little bit of lower level pro baseball, we didn't necessarily have the amount of Twitter tweets and all the nonsense that these very high level professionals are having. So it completely changes what you can look at and hear someone ripping you or bringing you down or putting some type of negative energy towards you, for you to be focused on that and have worry or doubts or insecurities. Because as an athlete, the ones who are the most confident, the ones who believe themselves the best, and the ones that are just out there having fun are the ones that tend to have a lot of success, right? But it is very important to always find the right ways to just stay there in the present. So I would give myself minimum, right? If 7 o'clock game, you might go about the day and do certain things, but a minimum of at least 4 hours before that game to really start getting the mind focused on what you're going to be doing. Being more present, seeing the visualization, making sure yourself is very calm, relaxed. If you got to go play a little game, a little ping pong, a little foosball with the boys, whatever you got to do to kind of keep yourself in a good spirit and make yourself feel a little bit more at ease. That's very important going into something that's going to have stress or pressure, right? Because it could be good stress when you're putting yourself in those challenges and adversity. But you have to know how to also channel it and use that energy in towards your performance to make you excel and not make you freeze. Because you go into fight or flight mode, there's times where you're going to fight, and there's times where you're just going to kind of flee away and you're going to get frozen. That's what happens whenever you see athletes get frozen, I kind of say, is when they were overthinking in the moment and they got paralysis analysis. And they got to get stuck. What do? Instead of just trusting their muscle memory, trusting their practice, trusting what their hard work they put in, and then go out there and just let it happen. Let your instincts take over. Let your intuition of where you should be naturally guide you. That is really crucial. Now, after, right, say it's a loss, right, if you're saying. At the end of the day, one thing that I always had a troublesome time with was leave it on the field. Don't take it off the field. It is very challenging, especially when your whole identity, when your persona is this athlete. when this is your life. You don't work a 9 to 5. This is your career, as you put it. So there is a connection that you get to your performance, to your results. And people also hold you accountable to that and hold you responsible to that. If you're gifted with this blessing or the right word I want to say is, I can't remember, but it's going to put you in the path that's going to help you to succeed, right? And for many athletes, it can be very troublesome to make the right decision off the field, to not get angry, to not get upset, and to not make it that you're a bad teammate now. And there was times where, I didn't have success. So coming off the field from that game, you kind of beat yourself up, right? You make it actually worse for yourself than just leaving it all on the field and knowing that you put your best effort out, right? And at the end of the day, that's all you can do. But there is then at a certain level of sport where people are going to bash you. People could go on TV and talk, very harshly of you and put you down. And that's not going to end up doing anything good for your psyche or your mental health. But they're also there as a business. Those people who are there, or the people who are fans, they can say whatever they want because they don't live in your shoes. They don't know the lifestyle. They don't know the hardship and the challenges to be that level of an athlete. And the pressure you still have on you to feel good, play good, and compete against people who are just as good, or some could be better at times, and get the result that they want. Their opinion of you means nothing. So you have to be just very resilient to understanding people are always going to talk, but many people can't walk it. Yeah. So if they're talking but they can't walk it, why are you listening to them? For the people who have lived that experience, if you ever look at past athletes or people who are on broadcasting and Sportsnet, they're focused on saying the reality of what happened. Oh, well, this player made a really good play here, and this person was in the right position at the right time, and maybe the coach made a good call. Yeah. About all the variables of what made that happen. They won't bash the individual saying that they're not good or they're not this. They might just see the aspects of the game. So there's two ways to look at it. The person who doesn't know is just going to say the superficial things. Oh, they're lazy or they were this or that. And it's really not going to lead them in a direction that is truthful. But then you have the people who understand and have been in those people's shoes who will commentate in a much more beneficial way for the athlete. That it's not degrading them or putting them down or making them feel like they're not a good human being because you lost. Yeah. You know what I mean? You have to have a winner and a loser. So respect.
You have a situation where, let's say that was in a one-game example, right? Like you missed a big moment. But then let's talk about a slump, right? Okay. All of a sudden now you're in a slump. You've had several games. You keep striking out. When you try to steal bases, you're not being able to steal. How's the coach respond to that? Like, what would the mindset of the coach be in that situation to help a player through a slump to get their positivity back, as well, get their groove back on, and get that streak back going?
Yeah, that's a good point. When it comes to dealing with a slump, I'll give you another experience. There was a time when I was 17, and we were doing a big fall trip playing against a bunch of universities. So the nice thing about the Ontario Blue Jays is we would go on this fall trip to do a lot of exposure to play against other colleges and universities in the States, because in the fall semester, schools can't play against other schools. You can only scrimmage, and I know in JUCO you can, but in like Division I, Division II, I'm pretty sure, you can only play against yourselves or high school teams or people who are not like of your league and your conference. So there was a time where I was really trying to change my mechanics, okay? And I was struggling with a little bit of my timing and the plane or the bat path I was taking. So I was like popping too many balls up, or I was rolling over too many balls. Mm-hmm. So I was dealing with, growing and my strength and, the challenge of trying to perform, to have college coaches like you and all that good stuff. So you try to force it a little bit, right? Yeah. Sometimes the at-bats, I wouldn't necessarily let it come to me. I try to go after each pitch or be a little bit too aggressive, and that will definitely have some repercussions. But there was a time I was probably like 0 for 25. Yeah. And for me, that's like a decent slump. That's probably at least 4 or 5 games of like just not having any success. And, once you get past, I'd say 5 games, you're in a slump, right? You're not really breaking out of it. And I cried on the bus. Like, I 100% had so many tears on some of the bus rides, like, near the end, because I'm trying so hard. I'm working so hard on mechanics, but it wasn't really just the mechanics. It was definitely my mental side that was not trusting my abilities. That's why every at bat I was trying something new with my hands and trying where my elbow needed to be and trying to be so mechanical with the physical instead of just understanding, put the ball on the bat and play hard, right? And whatever you've been putting into practice for your mechanics is just going to happen. If you try to think mechanics while you're playing, you're not going to succeed. I'll tell you that firsthand. Yeah. So you have to always remember there's time for practice and there's time just to play. And it can be difficult at times when you're competing to not get analytical, to not be so critical on yourself that you didn't get this hit because it was your mechanics. Well, maybe that pitcher made a really good pitch, right?
Yeah,
there's other aspects that was beyond my control that I've tipped my cap. Or maybe my mindset was too focused on the mechanical aspect, so I wasn't actually as dialed in to square the baseball up and have a better contact with it. So again, just where my head was at was too focused on my physical instead of just being in tune with the game. So I wasn't present enough in those at-bats. And then once you kind of have a few, I guess, hits and good success, you almost take that pressure off yourself to be mechanical because you're like, oh, this is it. And then you kind of go through a little bit of a struggle again and you say like, oh, maybe I do need to change it again. And there's that lack of trust, right? Trust creates peace on your inner self. It allows you to just have that good self-esteem that like, yes, I got this. Yeah. I got the right tools and techniques that I can just put this into practice and it's going to work out. And as you're developing as a kid, especially for me, I was behind a lot of kids in the States because us Canadians are raw with a lot of our skills. We don't have as much time to practice and compete at the level they do.
We got winter too, right?
And we have winter. And if you don't have a nice facility, that changes, and you're not playing all year round sometimes compared to the kids in the South. Now, of course, there's kids all over the North. They have to go through the same grind. But it's just a little different culture here. So definitely when it comes to a slump, if I were in the coach's position, I would have to remind that kid to have fun. Because at the end of the day, why are you playing? You're supposed to be playing to have fun. Competing is great, right? And competing to the point where you win is even better. Awesome. But that's kind of like the cherry on top of the cake. It's not necessarily the only thing that you should be doing because your whole life you've won and lost. But didn't stop you from going back out to play again when you did lose. You wanted to still go play the game because you enjoyed the game, right? So if you're out there only to get the praise of being the winner and every time you lose, it really takes a harsh toll on you, well, then you're going to be put into a slump at some point. It's like the universe naturally does it so that you have to learn this lesson. And usually, for anyone who I've been with or I've watched or seen in sports, you can see their mental side is really taking a toll when they're going through a slump. You don't see great athletes who are consistent with the results have those roller coasters of their mental side. A lot of times, there's like a very big high of when you're on cloud nine. It feels like everything you do, it's just going your way. But then there's the flip side of that, where you're on the bottom now, and it feels like no matter what you do, you couldn't even hit water if you fell out of a boat. It's so difficult, and it feels like no matter how hard you try, it just won't go your way. But with sports, this is where that 60-40 comes in from the whole mental to physical. Because, 60% will keep you on the field, but 40% might not allow you to play. You could be on the bench if you can't figure out that other 40% to make the whole. So for a slump, it's usually they're so focused on the mechanics or the analytical side or being critical of their physical nature instead of fun. So I would just remind him, or her, you need to go out there and find a way to enjoy the moment. Maybe you need to take a little bit more time before the game to do more visualization. See yourself having more success. Be a little bit more positive in your thinking before you're going to the game so that you can let that fruition and manifest easier. Because if you don't have it in your head and believe it already, it's very difficult to achieve it, especially when other people have strong psyches or are doing those techniques to ensure they have success on the opposite side of the field of you. So you need to be doing the same level of mental training and the mindfulness work to just keep yourself positive, but as well, sometimes there's a lack of gratitude that can come into play, that they're forgetting the opportunity they have right in front of them and they're just being so hard on themselves. When they're realizing, hey, you have the opportunity to play sports at the collegiate level or professional level, you know what I mean? And if it's even in high school or it's at a lower level, it's just reminding them for sure about the fun.
Yeah.
But when you get to a certain level where it's almost like your career or your next stepping stone in your life for what you want to do, even in college, then you have to just really reiterate the importance of the steps beforehand, of being more positive in your thinking, slowing down a little bit more. Go listen to your favorite music a little bit more. You know, spend time around the people who keep you in a more joyful state and a little bit more happier feelings, and you feel very at ease and restful and relaxed.
Yeah.
When you're at practice, maybe show up a little earlier and let's put in a little extra work together on those specific things that you feel are troubling and get that out. Let go of that insecurity of not trusting your ability to do that properly. Mm-hmm. And when you go out the next time, come out being relaxed, confident, and just trust what you put into practice. And whatever's supposed to happen will happen. And remind them, try not to force it. You don't need to force that next hit. If they have to walk you 40 times before you get your next hit, that's great. You're getting on base. You're doing a job for the team. But sometimes in sports, we try to force it instead of just letting the play come to us and then respond accordingly to make it the best outcome for that situation, which is a very challenging thing for a lot of athletes, especially in baseball. You want to go get that fastball. You want to go chase that high fastball, right? And then it puts you in a bad count. And then before you know it, you're doing something that's, other than walking back to the dugout, it's probably not a good at-bat. It's not going to be helpful for the team. So definitely a slump is something that's mental. Yeah. It's usually not physical because they wouldn't be at that level if their physical talent wasn't putting them on the field or on that team.
Yeah.
But it is the focus to having fun, staying positive, doing some more mindfulness work, putting a little extra work at practice to get rid of those quirks or things that are bugging you. And then when you're on the field, just let it happen. Just do it and be as present and enjoying the process and just control what you can control. And just have that good, quiet confidence. Don't need to go out there and be boasty. Be a better teammate. You know, so when you're having a slump, there's teammates who will be there to support you. That was one of the cool things I saw in my experience. If there was times I wasn't being a great teammate and things weren't going my way in the results, there wasn't that many people other than like maybe a few individuals that I was close with that might come and give me a pat on the back and be like, hey, you're all right, you got this. Just, try a little different or, go at it again and give it your best shot. But if you have a better mindset towards your team and you're a better team player, then you're going to have more of your team try to pick you up and be like, hey, man, you got this. You're good. Go out there with that next approach and just believe in yourself. And then that good talk around you and good energy could also help you break out of that slump. So it's like be a good teammate, have fun, stay positive, and control what you can control. And just keep trying to remind them of those things until they have some success and then share a good smile and laugh at them and be like, see? It was all fine. You figured it out. We'll keep working on it, and then just keep helping them grow, for sure.
Well, thanks, Coach, on that one. It's really interesting when you talk about positivity in that way, especially breaking out of the slump. I want to bring in more of a personal story that, this might be a little different of a topic on it. But I remember your first year that you were playing down in the States. You came on back for a visit, and we had talked, and we were talking about how things went with the draft, how things went with the year. Mm-hmm. And you had brought up, and correct me on the story if I'm wrong, because I just want to get a better understanding. Because when I was reading it, I was thinking about when I read this chapter where positivity goes wrong, a little bit, and about the coaching staff of this particular team and their routine and method, And I want you kind of to explain to the listeners a little bit about where did that coaching staff go wrong? Because I know you had said that the players even agreed that were on the team that there was a bit of an issue with how this coaching staff was going forward on their positivity training. I'm just curious about is there a time with coaching that this go a little bit different or a little bit awry?
Yeah. So would you want to really talk about my first year of college?
So the one where it was particularly there was an issue with the staff.
The one where I was off the team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the issue with the staff, again, the players agreed that there was an issue with the staff.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, I went to Northeast Texas, and it was a community college out of Mount Pleasant. I, at the time, had been drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in the 21st round. My ego was definitely at its high. I felt very praised about myself, and I thought I was, the next best thing. So that I had learned because I had always been taught by some people around me that you kind of have to fake it till you make it. And that's kind of walking around almost on that thin line of confidence and arrogance. And I was a little bit more on the side of the arrogance. And this is a part of my journey that I learned from, and I was definitely humbled. So definitely a cool experience of what not to do at times. But when I showed up to school, this coaching staff, one of the coaches I got along with very well. He ended up being the coach that worked with the players the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Our other coach was the athletic director, but he was also the main manager of the team. So he called the shots when it came to mostly everything.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I think there was a discrepancy in how I was taught baseball at a younger age and my natural instincts of watching the game. Whenever I pick into a sport, I go watch the best. I go look at the professional level, and I see it as what are the all-stars, the big leaguers doing, and how can I implement that into my game to make me closer to their level and their caliber, right? That's the focus. You always go look at the best for the most part.
Yeah.
So the way I carried myself was very much like I was a big leaguer. But I didn't do it in the sense of big leaguing people. I did it in the sense of how my energy flowed. So if we're in practice and it's an unnecessary thing to apply a lot of energy towards, well, I'm going to dial it back a little bit because, one, you don't need to injure yourself. Two, going balls to the wall, as we like to put it, or two, rah-rah, which is very college-like, is something I'll say many times, is not always going to be the most beneficial for when you're doing reps. Now, there's times that you need to be at game speed. You have to do reps. And depending on what we're doing, 100% I would be at game speed. But I also had an issue with my own self that I would be very, very hard on myself if I didn't get results.
Yeah.
So this coach was very set on no matter who you are, how good you think you are, it's always about the team. And I believed in that. That's true. That's always true. And this was something I had to learn, and this is where this experience came in. But I had a troublesome time of listening to a coach who didn't really study the game to the level that it was going to help my performance at the professional level. He was very much small ball, how are we going to find a way to win this baseball game? But I was so focused on development that I was not so focused about the team winning. I was at JUCO to go and get drafted again. My mindset, the only reason I went to this school out of all the schools I could go to was to try and go there and get drafted again. So it was a wrong mindset. If I would have went there and thought, how could I be the best teammate I could be? How could I just be focused on doing those things? It would have actually made my results probably better. But because I came in with more of the I'm better than most and I just got drafted and I think I'm on cloud 9, it made me have this, I guess, isolation of an attitude that other than the two other Canadians that were there with me, I really wasn't close to anyone else on the team other than my one roommate.
Yeah.
Right? There was a few guys who got along because we had similar mindsets.
Yeah.
We were talented. We could respect each other of our abilities.
Yeah.
But I definitely had an issue at times with being able to let things go. So there was an instance when we were in fall ball, and we had a little bit of a tournament with other JUCOs at our field, and I rolled over on a ball to the shortstop, ran through the bag, whatever at first, and I grabbed my bat, and I kind of huck it towards the dugout, like near where the other bats are, but it skips off the sand and goes into the dugout and almost hit my head coach. So obviously that's a no-no for all athletes. Don't do that. But that was me having that time where my ego was definitely too high, and I needed to improve that. And along my journey, I definitely fixed that. But there was just because of, again, going through the childhood of being always a great athlete, always having a lot of success, then getting to the point where, in JUCO, you start to see better competition. But I had such a high expectation for myself and a high standard that I still saw myself being better than what I was facing. So I thought my success should be way higher. And it was actually only being a detriment to my overall results. But then it made me look like kind of an idiot, of course, that I wasn't able to just let things go. I was very selfish, as you would say, at those times, to be focused more on the team. Because when you actually try to compete for the team, that I learned over time, you end up actually playing better. Because you take the stress off of yourself that this is about me. It's about a bigger picture, right? And that bigger picture is going to lead to you performing better. So it's kind of a weird thing. It's like you take the stress off of yourself and your results and put it more towards the task and the job that you have to do right now. And if you execute that to your best, you end up naturally creating your best result that you could have ended up anyways. So that experience, the coach had a philosophy very much of a rah-rah mentality. That every pitch, everyone's got to be saying something. You keep the energy up.
This is what I remember,
really, really high energy in the dugout. Because, of course, at that level, we don't have lots of people in the stand. It's very much, it feels like you're on a backfield when it comes to like spring training. And you're in the middle of nowhere, right? There's cows in left field kind of thing. So I ended up being a person going through my times that I always believed the way I gave towards the team, the way that my natural way of helping the team was by performing, was by the results. So when I struggled at times with consistency of results, I naturally was never the person to be loud and rah-rah and a very overly chatty person towards the game. Like, hey, here we go, kid, let's go. That just wasn't who my personality was. And there's a lot of people like that. It's just some people are more introverted when they're playing, some are more extroverted. Some just love to just talk. That's just how their personality is. But I had a troublesome time with always wanting to be chatty. And that was something that was like kind of an X beside my name, that I wasn't being a good teammate, right? But realistically, I was just really focused on what am I going to make my adjustment in the next at bat, right? And this doesn't mean I wouldn't say good things or still be chatty. I just wouldn't be to the point that they wanted me to be. And being you're in a different environment, you're thousands of miles away from home, the culture's different, right? There is some different aspects, of course, when it comes to your skin tones. It can make a difference. Unfortunately, I had a coach that pretty much referred to me as boy all the time, so that was different for me. It's something in the South that you have to sometimes get used to. And I just had to know how to kind of do what they wanted me to do, but in the back of my mind, still do what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do that well, right? And that's something you learn along in life, especially when you have a boss or you're in some type of field or whatever, that there's someone ahead of you or above you in terms of the chain of command, that they want you to go about it the way that they see it. And you have to find a way to work along with that and try it and do it their way. But potentially there might be a different way that works better for you, or in the back of your head, you know that that's not necessarily what aligns with your values or how you go about it, but you're going to still make it seem that you're trying to do it this way, even though in the long run, you're trying to get to a whole different picture. So it was something I had to learn, but there was some issues with my own anger that I would outlash when I would have not the best results. So that made the coach already have an idea of me from that one instance, that I was just a hothead. I thought too much of myself. I think I'm better than everyone and all those things. But really, I worked my butt off. I was there first practice and I left last at practice. You know what I mean? So the arrogance was coming from how hard I worked, but it was also this idea that I needed to be, I didn't have true inner confidence at the time. So the arrogance was trying to give me the confidence. I was like really weak-minded, really. Because if you use anger to get through adversity, it's very weak-minded. When you can be zen and believe in yourself and really inner self has a good self-esteem, and you can be a great person, you don't have to be mean or rude or, against the grain of what helps the team, then it's going to be beneficial on an overall perspective. But that experience was definitely interesting. And for the most, if you guys don't know, it actually got me kicked off my team after 6 games into the season. And that was a lesson I had to learn, right? Now, I was fortunate enough, like, think about it, right? You're coming from Canada. Your parents are nowhere to be found. They visit once a year maybe to come watch you play. You went there with this high hopes of being this next level athlete. I'm going there to get drafted. So my mindset was too focused on the next steps. Instead of going there and just enjoying that journey of the process, I was so focused on leaving there, on getting to a professional team, on getting out of there, that I was, everything that someone was trying to show me, I was like, well, you don't really know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And there was issues, when we were doing certain drills. When we had a AAA player for the Oakland Athletics, Jermaine Mitchell, he came out and we're doing base running. And because University of Arizona did something in the World Series, that was like this strategy. This was a specific one. I'll give you a story. We had to run straight at the base and like 3 feet from the base, try to make a sharp turn and go. To try and fool them that we're running through the bag compared to rounding the bag to go to second. Well, we had like 3 dudes roll their ankles while doing the drill. And I did it like twice, and I was able to do it, but it definitely felt awkward, and it was unnecessary. If there's like a trick play or something you're doing, cool. If it's like for a specific time only, great. But he was trying to say like we should run bases like this all the time. Well, here comes the AAA player in our drill, and he takes the normal rounding of the bag, how you're supposed to, and he looks at us, and he was talking to me, he's like, man, what are you guys doing?
This is what I'm saying.
So there was times where because of the drills we were doing and the way he would coach it, I knew he wasn't going to help me in the baseball aspect. because there is a level of intelligence when it comes to each sport. And sometimes, I'm very fortunate. I had a good understanding of the game from a young age, and I always watched the best. And I'd watch big league games. You know what I mean? When you're in college, it's a stepping stone. But I didn't need to go to college. I got drafted to go straight to the minor leagues.
Yeah.
So I already had the abilities and the mindset, technically, to be in professional baseball.
That was Baltimore.
But
right?
it was Baltimore. But it also gave me too much of an ego to that when I was here to think that I'm above someone else. That this coach has nothing to give to me. He was 30 years old. He was young. He had his own, insecurities and ego too. And when you have two egos clash, it was almost like he thought I was trying to coach people away from his philosophy, because I was sharing my insight of things, and it didn't always align with what the coach was trying to say. But I was aligning it with what I'm watching on TV, what I'm listening to from past coaches who have been professionals, and even I've met big leaguers along the way and picked their mind. Right? Yeah. But there's a whole different way the game's played in professional baseball than when it is in college. And I had to understand, I'm in college. You're on a college field. You're no better than the person who's on that field with you. No matter how talented you are, you have to go out there and play college baseball. When you get to professional baseball, then you get the right and you've earned the ability to go play professional baseball. Yeah. Then you can say maybe a few words to the umpire about a call you didn't like. Yeah. Then you can walk off the field a little bit differently. Yeah. But when you're in college, there's a certain way it's done. And I just didn't know how to get away from the way I was with the Ontario Blue Jays, where they groomed us to be more professional. Yeah. They still instilled the values of college baseball and how to be run off the field, always be a good teammate, do all the things that you naturally need to be, more rah-rah. But they at the same time were developing us to be the next cream of the crop for professional baseball from Canada, right? For especially Ontario in our area. And it was a hard thing to disconnect that I'm not better than these people and that I can just do what I need to do because really I don't need to be here. And mindset taught me a really big lesson. And then I got 4 months of sitting, off the team where I just worked on myself, trained and did stuff. And fortunate enough for me that I had a lot of other scouts who really liked me. And I still got drafted that year, 37th round to the Minnesota Twins. Yeah. Right? So it was pretty much like hey, we might have the opportunity for a contract for you, but it's so late in the rounds that there might not be enough roster spots. Yeah. So I had to experience that too, where I was in Kansas, which was one of the coaches that I got really along with. So he was from Kansas. Yeah. And that naturally gave me the opportunity to actually go into Kansas, play some summer baseball to get more at-bats under my hand, under my feet, I should say, because I had all this time now of not competing. So I had then already made a transfer to Howard College, which is on the complete opposite side of Texas in Big Spring. And they were a well-known JUCO. They had been first overall in the nation. When I was there, we were first overall for a while. We were a really talented club, and there was quite a few kids who came off there in the top 10 rounds that were amazing athletes. And just because I needed to play some baseball, I went to Kansas. And that one coach knew my personality. He knew I wasn't this kid that when I'm on the field, it was almost like I was a different person. It was like a different side of me came out that kind of got a little too aggressive, too angry on myself, too critical. But off the field, I was like the nicest, kindest human being. So the coach who worked with me off the field knew that and just saw that I just needed to work on my mental side of the game. Whereas my manager, who didn't do much of that, only saw one side of me and thought very much that was my personality. So it made a big conflict of interest. But, luckily I went to Kansas and had a great summer, had a really fun time. And that set me up to go to Howard College, where then I had probably one of my best statistical college years.
I was going to say, so if you think about it this way, we talked about at the very beginning of the interview we were talking about that age where you realize the body and mind match together a little bit, that's an important aspect of sport. And you're saying it was around 16 you began to realize that. Well, then you're talking about now when you're 18, 19, 20. Yeah. That's when you're like, oh no, mindset is where it's at. And can I just say, as we wrap this up, seeing you grow up and become an athlete here in Sarnia, you could tell that body was the main part of your game. You really thought that way. The mindset part was kind of like a second thought.
Yeah. But then it just kind of came.
Yeah, it just kind of came natural. But when you came home, after your time in college, you could tell the mindset changed. Right. And all of a sudden, when we're competing with you, when we're playing with you, we're just having fun. We can tell that your mindset really grew. and matured. And I'll just give one last story. It was like last summer we were both in a triathlon together. You did the biking portion, I did the running. And I remember we were waiting for our swimmer to come back.
Yeah.
And it was the first time in years I saw Locked in Julian ready to go. But it was different. Like, again, like you're saying, that aggression side of it was different because, like, it was the plan. It was the structure. It was the routine. It was the Julian I remember, but just in such a matured way, man. So when I read the book, it just like was like wrapping up to me that development even within you. And I really appreciate that you were able to share with me today a little bit more about some of these, especially these challenging moments, right? So thank you, man. I really appreciate the chat.
I appreciate you saying that too. And I remember you mentioning that when you were saying, like, man, this is locked in jewels, but definitely with a much better mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And I needed a little bit of those hardships or those mistakes or the failure in order to learn the lesson in order to grow. And that's why my experiences, when you ask me how I would coach a kid, I would just be very open and say, like, hey, where you are is not where you're going to be. You have to do things poorly before you can do them great. And something that I struggled with was that mental side. So I really focused on us being able to work together and, you know, the right coaches, the right mentors, reading the right books. And that was the biggest thing that allowed me to change my perception of how I approached competition, of taking it a little bit more.
The preparation's
the preparation's
Planning
important.
is important.
Planning is important. Prioritizing what in your training is important before the competition. But
I also just
knew
that if you have a
mindset
that is very
focused
on yourself,
especially
when
we're on a team, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
we need to cheer on our swimmer. Things didn't work out. The swimmer got canceled because of lightning. So then it all of a sudden threw a curveball where then, hey, you're about to go right now, and it's just going to be us two as a squad. And hey, we pulled out a second place.
We got silver. That was an unreal feeling. Yeah,
it was pretty cool. And even on the bike ride, I had so much adrenaline, and unfortunately, I ate a little bit mistimely, so I did get sick on the bike.
Yeah.
But I was able to keep pedaling after a while and maintain a pace that we were able to still come second.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a cool experience for me because I just got into cycling in the last couple of years. I'm seeing these Team Canada triathletes, you know, that I'm passing, and then when I got sick, they passed me back.
Yeah.
But it was a cool experience to let me know where my level of athleticism is.
Yeah.
And even being so fresh into a sport. But yeah, it was definitely, I've matured in the sense of, one, you need to be a good sport. At the end of the day, it's about coming together in a community and seeing people give it their all, be at their best, and see others want to give their best, right? That's really important. But also, I had a better maturity that just to have fun, right? And naturally, you're looser, you're more calm. But I still have the side of me that knew how to be dialed in, how to be focused, how to be disciplined, and be really, I would say just focused towards what am I trying to work towards. But knowing I did put in the practice, I did put in the work, and to just trust it. And then just have fun in that moment and just go by the feels, right? Not try to be critical or over-analytical, and what's to be will be. Yeah. So it did take years of trial and error. Yeah. It took different books I read that changed my mindset. It took listening to different coaches, mentors, and gurus. But I also worked on things on my other side of my personality. Not just my athletic side or the whole athlete world, but I worked on my mindfulness. I worked on being more calm in my mind, more still, a kinder person at all times. And I would say growing up, I was always a kind individual. I never would say I'm going on my way to be mean or rude. I just had an inability at times to not compete and let it get overboard, right? And when we were younger, to not let it come off the field, as you would say. To have a disconnect that when you compete, you leave it on the field. When you come off, you're it. And then just whatever you did, put your best effort, great. Yeah. So, but also because, depending on the level, like I'll tell you a story right now. When it comes to playing volleyball on Sundays, it's competitive Sundays, right? It's competitive volleyball, right? And Mo would laugh about this too, my girlfriend. But there's times where, I want our team to be doing better, right? And again, depending on, the level of what everyone's bringing to the team in your abilities, athleticism, but also your effort levels is going to completely change on the result of the team, right? And there's sometimes that everyone's feeling in a good mood, so we play a little better as a team. Then there's other times where, as a team, the mood's not really there. So then individuals start trying to force things and make it happen.
Yeah.
And it becomes very, tedious and hard for me to deal with at times because I'm so competitive. And I expect, then I put more pressure on myself. And then I actually make my own level of results hinder from that. And I just make my own performance actually lesser of what it should be.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to find a way at times. And this is something that's cool for me. Because when the moments happen, I step back and I go, man, I need to always remind myself I'm the mindset coach. I got to always find a way to be positive in this moment where everyone else is not very happy with what's going on. So I've gotten better at it, right, for sure. And Monica, she being a tennis player growing up, she learned how to move on from things really fast. Being a baseball player, you get time to kind of work through things in your psyche. And being a different sport, she's taught me along the way of the better way to handle when things aren't going your way in those individual moments, right? Because right after that, you could have the opportunity to get a good spike and everything's kind of like flushed out. But if it keeps lingering and you keep keeping that mood or that energy that is just stressing each other out, or you're not communicating well, or you're kind of like trying to point fingers at, oh, well, you didn't do this, well, you didn't do that, and it just makes the team not work well. So then it's a great way for me to keep developing myself as being a more positive teammate at all times, even when it's just for fun, as we put it. But when the word competitiveness or competition is involved, especially because it's competitive volleyball, then I naturally am just going to turn on that next gear and I get into that locked in mode. But when people around me are not at the level of work ethic or their effort level, I don't expect them to match my athleticism because I train and I've been a certain type of athlete. But sometimes I also have to step back and be like, who's on the court? What's their reason for playing? They're not taking it as serious as you. So maybe you need to dial it back and just have a little bit more fun. And the better I was able to just remind myself of fun, then even the times where it's not going as it should, and I would get upset a little bit to try and be like, hey, let's figure this out to try and win, I would actually take it in a better approach and be a little bit more mindful to keep smiling, keep talking. Hey, we got this. So what? Let's move on to the next one. Let's just make a good pass here and start doing the things that put people in a good mindset and more positive. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I just want to make one note about even the triathlon a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember after the race, and people had seen what happened during your ride.
Yeah.
But you had the sponsored triathletes, cyclists actually come up to you after and say, like, you got something, man.
Yeah.
You're doing amazing what you did. We're sorry to see what happened. I remember even the one gentleman who won the race.
Yeah, yeah.
He just came up to you after. He's just like, no, you competed today. Like, you were up there with us.
Yeah.
You had your bad break, but take that as a learning experience, and you did. You totally took that in stride. We're preparing for this summer to be able to compete again and get the goal this time because,
absolutely.
you definitely can. I got one last question for you because I think that, like, every one of our conversations has kind of come around the big picture.
Yeah.
And about the idea of the big picture.
Yeah.
And in the book, you really talk about as the individual and the big picture and keeping that in mind.
Yeah.
But as you've alluded to a few times, when you're on a team, the big picture can get really hard because everyone has their individual big pictures within that situation. I want to tell you a story I heard last night from another athlete. He was talking about a team here in town, a well-known team. I'm not going to say which team because we're not going on a bashing of teams. They had a 20-game losing streak, and like they're horrendous. They're making the playoffs somehow within the city, but they're a horrendous team right now.
Yeah.
And the guy was in the crowd watching. He's like, "You want to know what it is?" I was like, what is it? He's like, there's one guy on the team, by far the biggest point scorer on the team. However, during the games, he'll flat out steal the puck from players. So we're talking hockey. He'll flat out steal the puck from players. He'll flat out outrush people, like not be the team. In that bigger image, the team wants to succeed. The team wants to win.
Yeah.
But in his, he's thinking like, oh no, like I am the team on this one.
Yeah.
So Coach, one last time, I'm going to just talk to you about when you got the player on your team, that the bigger picture is his success or her success. How do you wind that player in? Because you don't want to get rid of a player. You want to be able to work with the player, especially if they are naturally gifted. Now that you're getting to this point of coaching, like, how do you work with the individual to say, like, okay, how can we make our team image everyone on the same page? Everyone has that same image, same goal to strive for. How can we work together on this?
Well, this is interesting, and I'm going to use a really good analogy for this one. Ronaldo, Messi.
Yeah.
Okay. This is something I've looked at many times. And for me, you're saying that, there was times where I was on a team and I got to be that athlete that was a part of a team that was not the greatest.
Yeah.
And I also can go back to our story of playing grade 8 soccer, where we, in my mind, our bigger picture was for us to win the trophy. Sure.
Yeah. Do you mind if I share this story? Because like I kind of want to give people an understanding.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to give listeners an understanding. Like, we did not deserve to be in that tournament. The only reason we were in that tournament was because Julian was on our team. Like, you know those situations where, like, even the goalie, like, exactly, like, the goalie's laying the goals and Julian would have to rush down the field to get more of the goals. That was the situation. So we made the semifinals. We made it pretty far in this.
Yeah.
But our coach had an issue with this. None of the players had an issue with it, but the coach did. And before the game, she sat Julian down and said, "You need to pass the ball." And Julian's immediate response like, "But we're not going to win if we do that." And she's like, "No, you need to pass the ball."
Oh, man.
We lost.
We did.
We lost. Julian was pretty mad after. As we were all bummed, but Julian was mad because he knew that this was absolutely the case. Because again, you know, like Canada, we're starting to get more known for soccer, but like,
yeah,
you know, this is again small town Sarnia.
The kids on the team who were good at the sport were all like Italian, Portuguese, Brazilian, or some other nation as their culture. So they grew up playing and watching more soccer. So they understood the game and they played it differently, right? But for the most part, our school wasn't the most talented out of the schools in Sarnia.
We were on the more lower income schools.
We were on the lower income schools. It's just how it worked. But with this story, this ties into, again, when you have an athlete who believes their bigger picture is, if I don't perform, well, we as a team don't win.
Yeah.
I am the team, kind of. And grade 8 was a great example where we were able to get so far on just individual talent, on just the Ronaldo, as you want to put it, right? Who could literally go from one end to the other end and score a goal. I was also, at the time, playing travel soccer. Yeah. And I was practicing almost every day playing. So naturally, until we played against Gregory Hogan, which had all the kids on my travel team, then we didn't have a chance because they just isolated me and we lost by a big margin. But that experience is always, to this day, I will remember her screaming at me to pass the ball, and I would pass it to someone and I'd say, pass it back.
And again, we would do it because, like, we knew the situation. We knew why we were there. We were just happy to be there, kind of a thing.
We had a lot of people happy to be there, but at the same time, there was people who wanted to win. Yeah. But my level of winning from a very young age was very much only win, and there's no such thing as losing, right? I was a crybaby when I lost when I was growing up as a kid. That's just how I was. But it was just that level of competitiveness and being a different mindset at the time. Yeah. But, you know, going back to the coaching perspective, now if I'm the coach, right, and I see there's a team as a whole that is not necessarily the greatest, but there's that one-star player, I would use the reference. It's hard with Messi and Ronaldo because they both play on teams that have a lot of players around them. That
greatness around them too,
right? But you can see how they facilitate their skills and their talent to make the people around them better. Yeah. We'll use Ronaldo first. Ronaldo is a talent that was built. He put that hard work in. Yeah. He obviously has some natural talent, but he was a person who had a crazy work ethic, and then it fruitioned into who he is now. Yeah. Generational player for sure. One of the best and one of the greatest. But if you see how he condones himself on the field, it's a very much, when I have the ball, I'm going to do my own thing and try to find a way to score at all times. Yeah, he'll make that good pass. Yeah, he might, look for the next player. But he's so focused on, if I don't score, we don't win, that his bigger picture is also about his results. Because he's still competing for the Ballon d'Or. He still wants to be better than Messi. So he's got a little bit of that ego involved. And I'm sure Messi has towards Ronaldo, but how he shows it is different, right? So Messi could be the same way. And there is times where he's a little bit of a ball hog too. But his skill with the ball is different from Ronaldo. Yeah. A little bit different of a player, for sure.
Power punch, yeah.
One more of a power striker compared to your center midfielder, right? And Messi was a striker at one point too as he was starting his career, and then he moved around. But if you see the energy that Messi brings, he is more of a leader, more of a captain, more of a guy that's going to, lead by passing the guys, giving people the opportunity to score another goal, knowing it's okay to make the assist, because in the bigger picture, we win as a team. He does very well because his talent naturally shines and he scores the goals. And he does take a little bit of selfishness at times to score the goal. But because of how well he incorporates his teammates, for how he behaves on the field with his teammates, off the field with his teammates, how he's a leader towards his talent, people want to give him the ball. If you even saw in this last World Cup, Ronaldo got benched, okay? Yeah. And they said he was underplaying, of his abilities, because when he was on the field, everyone was so focused on he needs to touch the ball. So you can isolate that on the field and you can do a little bit much. And then he puts pressure on himself that he's got to do more and more and more. Whereas Messi just let the game kind of come to him and knew that he had a team that is going to help him score, but as well he's willing to divert that out and help others to be the goal scorers too. Then, naturally, they have better chemistry. They have better things. There's also been other instances where Ronaldo, off the field with teammates, has conflicts where they're arguing in the locker room, where he's trying to scream at people and tell people what to do, and nobody likes a boss, right? Yeah. Especially if you're the player who everyone sees as, you're the Ronaldo, you're that guy. You need to find a way to try and make people play their best. And putting them down or telling them they did wrong is not going to help any athlete be more confident in himself or really be in a good spirit that is going to work along you to be their best version. Whereas Messi had more of the ability to guide people, to make things of like, hey, let's make this adjustment, let's do this. But he was also a better facilitator. He would always help more. So I would just use other instances, especially if I was my own team, right, when it comes to it, to explain to the athlete. If we were to go look at the elite athletes, the ones who are on TV, the most pressure, the most, of everything, and we see how they handle this situation, being on a bad team in a professional level, it's hard to say because everyone's good at that level, but we still, as fans, will say that team's good, that team's bad, even though all those people are very good. It's just generalization. But it's showing the example that when you are the best on the team, you need to find a way to make everyone around you play to their best. It might not mean you win a lot of games, but it's going to actually be better for you because if you're trying to move on to the next level, scouts want to see you being a good teammate. Scouts want to see you being a leader, no matter what the score is. Scouts want to see you having fun and smiling in what you're doing. If you're out there trying to steal the puck, trying to rush guys off of things, trying to force it, well then, potentially your talent could be at a different level. Maybe you do better with more, obviously, guys at your talent level. But sometimes, I'm sure there's times where maybe Connor McDavid wants someone his caliber beside him. Yeah. But if he knows if I make this pass, we might not score, so I'm going to try and dangle and do it myself. It's very difficult at times as the athlete to not get very coerced into the thought process that, well, as a team, our bigger picture is winning. Well, I'm our best player, so I need to take all the shots. I need to be the one trying to create those opportunities. And sometimes that actually is a detriment, and it'll actually make things worse. Because now you're making other guys not believe in themselves. So you're showing that, well, you don't trust them, and potentially some guys might want to have animosity towards you to show you up and not pass to you. When you are in the right position for that goal to be scored, they don't want to pass. Now they want to be selfish because you're being selfish. So it'd be reminding them that they're going to create a reflection of themselves on their team. If you're the best player and you're showing guys that you're willing to pass, assist, and be a great teammate, it's going to come back around to you that they're going to want to pass to you for you to score the goal, and you're actually going to score more goals. He's actually going to be seen as even a better player because then his team will be working because they'll know that he is the best player. They'll know that. And they'll help facilitate him to score goals because they know I have confidence in passing to him. I know, and they're okay with if he misses because they know 9 out of 10 times he probably puts that in, right? But if he's very selfish, then the person who doesn't get the puck back from him is going to be like, what, I'm not passing. I'm going to try and do it myself to beat the guy. And then that actually makes the result worse as a team. So it'd be always finding a way to teach them to be a leader, to try and help everyone around you to lift their self up, to try and be at necessarily your level. Or as a leader on the team, like Michael Jordan would do, hey, you guys need to be at 4 a.m. lift with us. You need to be at practice early in the rise with us. If you're going out and partying and drinking and doing all that fun stuff, well, you'd be better be ready to compete and do the things you need to do on the court. So it's all about when you're the best player, you have to find a way to make the players around you better. Yeah. And if you're making everyone worse or you're doing it in a selfish way, it's only going to be a detriment to the team. Absolutely. And having that bigger picture is where they need to come together, where the pictures need to align. That, again, depending on the sport, it's very difficult for team sports to an individual sport. You take a golfer or a tennis player, and you tell them to change their mindset, it's going to be different because their bigger picture is not towards a team, it's towards winning, which is why those sports are really hard mentally. Golf is a very mental sport. Tennis is a very mental sport. That doesn't mean basketball, soccer, baseball, football aren't, but you have someone to lean on. Oh, I didn't really do it, so I'll lean on my teammate to succeed. And you could win as a team even though someone made a mistake or failed. If you fail in those individual sports, you lose, right? So that's why the psyche of those athletes is cool to listen to, and that's why it's amazing I get to learn from Mo in her experiences and how it was being a tennis player at a high level and what she went through with the mental battle of what you need to be on a court to, want to be a good sport, but at the same time, bounce back from an intense rally or something that didn't go your way, either in your control or out of your control, and how did you move on to make an adjustment, make it a better approach, and then still compete and have confidence in yourself on that next game, right? So, yeah, bigger picture, always got to be focused on if you're the best athlete, making everyone around you play even better.
Yeah.
And if you're finding a way to make others worse, especially in a team sport, then you're actually not the best player. Because the best player makes people around them even better.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll put that note.
Jules, we can keep talking all day.
All day, I know.
I decided, because especially, we didn't even get into meditation or anything like that.
Yeah,
there has to be more talk.
We'll do a part 2.
Absolutely. But, listeners, The Power of Mental Toughness, Techniques for Peak Athletic Performance on Amazon. I'm telling you, it's a great book. Jules, just want to thank you again.
Yeah.
Be on to ask the questions.
Thanks for coming over for a cup of coffee and going through the book.
Absolutely.
For anyone who's tuned in, if you go on my profile, you'll be able to click the link that goes to the website. You will see right there the link to the book. There's the Audible, there's the ebook, and there's the hard copy. As well, I have an app out, so if there's any of these things that want to help you with your mental toughness, being more mindful, but as well the right amount of exercise and routines to do for workouts, having the right nutrition plans, and diving into meditation and breathing techniques, all of that is on my app. All of that is through that link. It's free to download. A lot of the content is free. If you want to level up, there is a subscription you can go through, and it'd be very thankful because there's a lot of hard work put into it, but I just want everyone to be able to have a better mindset and be focused on being the best version of themselves. And from my experiences and my journey, I share that into the book. I share that into my app. And all the content that I'm always creating, either on Wisdom or through my blogs and my content on Instagram and YouTube, I'm always going to be finding ways to help teach you guys from my life lessons in order to be the best version of yourself. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in. This is part 1 of going through the book review. Definitely, we talked a lot longer than we even expected, but it's so natural for both of us to do because we're best friends. And we'll definitely have a part 2 where we can dive into meditation and more mindfulness aspects that also enhance your mental toughness, but as well make you a better athlete and person on and off the field. All right, so stay strong, stay consistent, stay healthy, and stay in the moment as best as you can. Keep developing yourself and level up. Love you guys and have a beautiful day.